There will be many people that tell you that having multiple successful careers in different fields is impossible. Even trying is diluting your attention or spreading yourself too thin. Don't get distracted, they say. Stay in your lane. How are you going to earn a living? To those people, I say join our next discussion, where we will meet remarkable people who are actually living the multidisciplinary life and succeeding. There's nothing like providing real-life success stories, and that's what I try to do in my book, The Polymath. I give plenty of examples. You see, these people, they're not superhumans. They just took a different approach and were bold enough to design their own lives. So let's watch, be fascinated, and be inspired.
During these past 2 weeks, we have been talking about what is it to be a polymath and multidisciplinary person. And we'd love for you to share with us, what is it that you do that makes you a polymath or a multidisciplinary individual?
I can start off there, Montse, if you wish. First of all, thank you so much to you and Merritt and the organisers for putting this fantastic, unique festival together. So to get straight into it in terms of your question, what makes one a polymath? And I will be absolutely honest with you, is that I don't consider myself a polymath. I think this is a label that others may attach to some of the work that you have done in the past, but I simply have tried myself throughout my life, tried to lead a very rich life in pursuing different things that I've always wanted to do, different passions. It's not always been a linear trajectory, but essentially just trying to lead a life as rich as possible, trying to have as many experiences as possible, and trying to master different kind of disciplines, not always very successfully, but essentially that's what I have tried to do. And I've been relatively successful in some fields, less successful in others, but I think that has been the key kind of motivation, and that would be the key kind of advice to anybody, is that just don't try to focus just on one area. Maybe professionally you can, but have lots of different passions, extend your interest across the fields into all sorts of stuff. And and I think that you'll have a much richer life. And who knows, maybe you can leave the day job and go off and pursue something else, one of your other passions. But I think that's the kind of philosophy that I've tried to follow. People will call it different things, polymath or interdisciplinary. Some people may even call it you're totally unfocused. That's another label that others may put on it. It's not always a positive thing. But for me, it's been a very rich experience, and and I think that's been very positive for me.
So I'm going to follow up on this, because our strategy was to pass this along to our panelists to kind of get a bio from them, and they're being so incredibly humble. So we're going to help out a little bit and brag for them. So Dr. Azeem here is also going to say research professor at the Strategic Studies Institute, U.S. Army War College, and a director of the Center for Global Policy in Washington, D.C. He received his PhD from the University of Cambridge, after which he completed fellowships at the University of Oxford, Harvard, and Yale. He's also, advised dozens of world leaders. He's the author of many, many books. And I'm going through here quickly, been a reservist in the 4th Battalion Parachute Regiment and multi-award-winning entrepreneur. So ranked as top 100 global thinker for the European Social Think Tank in 2010. So yeah, just you are incredibly humble to regard yourself as of wanting to question what that title is of polymath.
Oh, thank you so much, Merritt. You're very kind, but I'm humbled to be accompanied and on this panel with my fellow panelist.
It's incredible.
I think just to continue what Azeem was saying is I do relate to one, not self-titling being a polymath, but also just in terms of the trajectory of a life, not having it be an intentional thing that I was seeking out. I think that, primarily for me, I've had a background in the arts, which I think is naturally polymathic because you're always drawing from all sorts of different areas. And I also resonate with being criticized or directed throughout life to saying like, maybe you should focus, maybe you should pick something, you know, the jack of all trades, master of none moniker that people like to give sometimes as you pursue these different things. But some of it, you know, a lot of it fueled by that deep curiosity, and I do believe a degree of humility that is required, because there's so many things that I've taken on in my life that I had no empirical evidence that I would be good at. So it wasn't choosing the action because, oh, I'm going to excel at this. It was truly entering with an absolute sense of unknowing and a willingness to fail that allowed me to kind of have this adventurous exploration of a lot of different careers and a lot of different aspects, both of artistic worlds and totally non-artistic worlds as well. But I would argue everything has an artistic side to it once you get into it.
There are two truths to that. Like I do believe like the doubts are real, right? When pursuing these things, and the constant feedback of, oh, you're being unfocused, or that critique of like, oh, it's a shame that what if you had, you know, weren't pursuing multiple things. But also Juli Crockett, we loved this quote about you, which was, have you ever met a retired professional boxer who is working on her doctorate in media and communications, sings lead for an alt country band, and is a published playwright and theater director, and works in a sex shop? No? Well, then you should meet Juli Crockett. She has done it all and more. I can't wait to ask you, like, dig deeper into your background. That's the best quote ever.
I know, it's like the work that 50 people might be doing, just like packed into one person.
And the contrast.
Yeah.
Embrace paradox.
I love it.
You know, it's so powerful to hear, you know, my esteemed colleagues that are just, you know, Azeem and what Juli have said, because, you know, for me, this has never ever been about trying to become a multi whatever. It's just been about purpose. Really, It's just been about purpose and passion. And, you know, purpose and passion are the most critical things, I think. When you understand your purpose in life, this is then to know that anything you want to put your heart to and you pursue it with all of your passion, that, you know, you'll be good at it. And, you know, I think a lot of people don't follow their purpose enough, because if they start following their purpose and their passion, I reckon they're going to be successful, because they're going to enjoy doing the thing which they do. And, you know, that has been the thing that has held me to all of the things which I've been involved in. It hasn't been, you know, I've had something I wanted to do, but then I've always had interest in other things I want to do. And so it's just been a case of, all right, well, let's do this, and then let's try and do this, and then let's do this. And, you know, it just happens that because there is that passion and that drive and that purpose behind each one of them, it's just manifested naturally, I think. I'm a great believer in the law of attraction. And the moment you begin to start manifesting this type of stuff and visualizing it, then it can actually become actual. You know, as you see it in your mind, you hold it in your hand, and then you just kind of go with the flow of everything. So for me, it's much been the same as it's never ever been about achieving anything. It's just been about living the passion and, you know, fulfilling purpose.
Yeah,
I would love to dig.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I think Nathaniel raises a very important point, is that this is really about passion and it's about purpose. And, you know, no two people are the same, and everybody will have a different purpose and a different motivation and a different passion. And, you know, I look at my own life. My parents came from the Indian subcontinent to Scotland, as you probably realise, back in the 60s. And, you know, they came from, like many of our parents who came from immigrant backgrounds, their single purpose was economic security. So they really could not afford a lot of the kind of opportunities and the choices that I had. Now I'm in a very different situation, and I can afford to experiment, to look at other things, and to try and live a very different kind of life. So their purpose and passion in life was to make a life for their family, a secure life, and they achieved that relatively successfully. And whereas for others, you know, like myself, we are actually in a position to actually experiment and take these opportunities a lot further. And I think that's a very important understanding to have, is that today, in modern day life, we actually have a lot of opportunities at our disposal. You know, especially even during COVID, we've seen how much knowledge and how much opportunities is actually available online. You know, one can literally learn an entire language, do an entire course in quantum physics, as you know, Merritt, literally just watching YouTube videos and everything else. So everything is there. One can follow their passion relatively easily. And but at the same time, you know, I always feel that it's important to understand that everybody is different and everybody has a different purpose. For some people, literally just having a job and having security is enough for them to be happy. And that's perfectly fine. And that's how we should be totally content with them. But others want to lead a more richer, more diverse life, do different things and try out. And that's obviously something that's, you know, benefit a lot of people. And it's all just down to the individual.
So I've been asked this, and I sometimes don't know how to respond. Like, I think some people really want to find their purpose and passion, but they don't know how. So do you have advice, or do you remember for yourselves when you found your purpose and your passion? Or what was it like, you know, at 8? Was it instantaneous? Did it take work?
I can answer that unless I'm... Yeah. So essentially, the way I would answer that is that, you know, people will want to find their purpose and passion, and I don't believe I have one. Some people may do. You know, they want to be musicians, they want to be authors or whatever they may wish to be, and that is their purpose and passion. You know, and I think this is one of the things that this festival is all about, is that there doesn't have to be one. You know, you can have multiple. I have a professional passion, which I really enjoy. But at the same time, I have many others that I like to dabble in, and I really find fulfillment. And so there doesn't necessarily have to be one, and that's perfectly fine. You can excel in multiple fields whilst, you know, becoming a global leader in one. And in others fields, you know, you may not excel, but you just simply really enjoy being in that. Some people might enjoy writing short stories and just self-publishing, because that's what their passion is. You know, they will never become a J.K. Rowling, but it's just part of their thing, part of their motivation. So I think, once again, you know, there is no linear answer to this. I think everybody's going to be very different. But I think one of the best ways to kind of try to find out what you're interested in is to try it out. And there's just so much opportunity now in this virtual world that we have now created over the last year. There's so much opportunity to find out more and to learn from other people's experiences, and just dabble in everything that you possibly can. You know, we're all under lockdown still, so there's opportunity there for, you know, everyone's got excess time on their hands, and everything's online now. So there really is no excuse to kind of go out and experiment and find out as much as you can.
Yeah, going out to experiment, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I love how you. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just. Oh, sorry, Merritt. No, just to dovetail off of what Azeem says. You know, I mean, you know, one of the things which I'm involved in is empowerment of young people in one of the enterprises which I run, and sometimes young people struggle with, you know, in what they want to do. And one of the key ways, really, in unlocking purpose is really finding out what you love. You know, and oftentimes, if you find out what you really love, what that thing is that you love, and then you just put a little bit of attention towards it, and then think, oh, is there something professional that's attached to this now? Oh, maybe I can actually fulfill this further in a deeper thing. And it's actually then just going on that journey. And again, you know, just a touch on the thing, it is actually just to touch on what Azeem said as well, is really just trying the new things and seeing whether that aligns with what you enjoy. And you know, there's a whole load of emotions that come out of that, because, you know, you get things like dopamine. If I smile at all of you, I'm going to smile now. I'm going to smile. I'm smiling. What happens is it causes laughter. You see, and you see all of these hormones of dopamine, oxytocin, all these things will just start firing off in your brain, and then you'll become better at doing it. And it's that process of really finding out what you really love, and then looking at how you can actually play that out in terms of some type of meaning through something that you're doing. You know.
That's great. And also, I'm going to jump right in, because Nathaniel, you're not getting away without us bragging about you. So your fields are social entrepreneurship and education. And Nathaniel Peat is a multi-award-winning entrepreneur, international speaker, martial artist, engineer, pilot, and man of many talents and achievements. You're a regular contributor to TV, radio, and print stories, which deal with social issues surrounding youth, gender equality, youth crime, entrepreneurship, and renewable energy. So snaps to that. Ooh. Just had to jump in. I was like, no one's getting by without the full bragging. Julie, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was say from I do think that it's an incredible privilege to get to pursue your interests, which is something that has to be acknowledged. Where you know, that economic reality for many people, where all of their time, like the economy of time that is completely absorbed in providing for the basic necessities of life, is one of a great limiting factor for many people in terms of their ability to pursue the things that they're interested in doing. And it's tough because, you know, here in the US, our state of funding for the arts isn't great. So especially in that lens that I've been in, being an artist is a struggle in itself, in terms of, so most of the artists that I know are inherently going to be polymathic, because you're going to have to do multiple things to support yourself while you're trying to do your work. And that becomes a tax on your time and your attention and your ability to really lean into the things that you're passionate about. And it's an interesting line to try to walk. A lot of the multi-hyphenates of my resume aren't necessarily because I wanted to do those things. It's because I had to pay my bills and survive and find the most creative, interesting way that wouldn't be soul crushing and destroy me as a person, while having to like interface with capitalism in the world of commerce. And I read a really interesting book a while ago that was called Culture Crash, and it was about, you know, with the collapse of the middle class also comes the collapse of what we call the creative class. Is, you know, 20 plus years ago, I used to be able to live in New York City and work part-time at a bookstore and be an artist and support myself. And that reality has been obliterated from the face of the earth, that those jobs are no longer available, that, you know, quality of life is no longer available. And we've seen this profound eradication of the number of people who are artists, who on their tax returns are journalists or photographers or playwrights, and you're watching this decimation of this level of creator, or that is so essential. Like, we know in our hearts and souls that this area is so essential, but in all of the lenses of what we value in the world, when you look at the stock market and all these things, it's not a valued profession. It's not something that we invest time in schools here anymore. And it's such a profound loss to like the early life experiences. I'm sure Nathaniel can speak more to this, that spark the awareness of what it is that you love and what you're passionate about. Is a lot of times it may not be that you become a painter or a dancer or an artist, but those experiences open up that part of you that has that adventurousness and has that thinking. And if we aren't investing and giving our children, and not just our children, I mean, giving our grownups and our senior citizens and everybody that kind of time to explore and not have every single thing of our life be monetized and in this like gig economy, you know, that is such a critical like care we have to take of for the soul of humanity.
I love how you put it
Couldn't
into
agree
words,
more.
like, yeah, like being able to try different activities, and maybe you might not be like the best in something, but then as you start discovering that you can try different things out, and then you start getting better at some, and then you can understand how the people around those activities or those types of artwork or sciences or whatever activity you decide to do, you're as you were saying, like something happens in your brain that you start getting, like, I wouldn't say like addicted, but it's something that like in a good way, you're just like, I want to know more. Like I want to try something new. I want to try and learn from other people and start like traveling and learning from different perspectives. And I think that's what also prepares you and gives you this extra input that your brain needs in order for you to want to continue moving forward when you don't.
I'm just curious with Nathaniel and Azeem as well, because I know one of the things when I was thinking about this topic for myself is I think that some of what has allowed me to do so many things is that I actually don't have like a very strict, firm idea about who I am. Like that I don't have a real, like I'm a very fluid sense, and even things about, I couldn't be strict to say like what kind of food I like or what's my favorite color or all these things, where it's kind of like I don't know. And that something about occupying that space of not having like a really defined sense of this is me and this is what I like and this is what I'm into has allowed me to have that curiosity of when something else comes up, you go, I don't know, maybe I would like that. Maybe I would be good at that. And so how to maintain that sense of openness, as you go through life, that you're not, or do you find a more restrictive, this is me definition helpful?
I think, sorry, go ahead, Nathaniel.
I mean, for me, I started to learn martial arts when I was very young, and that was a real good foundation for me. But for me, in the context of being a Black man, in fact, growing up in a country that has many obstacles for me and people like me when I was growing up as a younger person, I think sometimes it's circumstances that pushes you to become better, circumstances that pushes you to increase your knowledge. Circumstances, not for me, but for others, perhaps, that are immigrants in the country, pushes them to learn the language and also to learn another language on top of the language which they've got, and then to learn a new culture or to actually acquire another skill if they're a professional. Example being a doctor coming into a country and now having to retrain as a doctor in another country, or being pushed because they can't get a job and having to drive a taxi and now becoming an expert driver. I mean, these are the types of individuals that will acquire many skill sets simply because of their circumstance. And so that's another way in which people are pushed towards excellence. I know for myself, in terms of my parents, they said to me, you've got to work twice as hard to get into this job. You've got to work 2 times as hard to make sure that you can, achieve that thing. And I think this type of mindset, conditioning at a young age really helps to push you forward. I always wanted to be in aviation. So that was something which I always wanted to do since I was young. It just so happened that I couldn't do it initially. So I had to do other things in order to get there. So that was sort of the way in which I kind of started to go along that journey. And I also had very strong motivators as well for me, because I remember my teacher who pulled me into the same type of mindset as the young people that I was growing up with, in that, we're not going to pass school. We're not going to get through school. You're probably going to fail, like your friends, and having that pressure, which motivated me, said, no, I'm not going to listen to what that person is going to say. I'm actually going to achieve. No, I'm going to do this. That almost was a way to kind of push to make sure that I could prove the critics wrong. So there's a bit of that as well, and I think when you get into that type of flow, you have to have an intense amount of focus on those things. And it's not as though you're doing everything at the same time, because in order for you to catch the rabbit, you can't chase 2 of them at the same time. And so it's actually mastering one, like Julia's got a cello back there, she's having to get the vibrato sorted out on the cello, and then she's going to the guitar. Now she's not going to be learning both. She might learn both of them at the same time, maybe, but she's got to focus to become excellent in that thing. And I think it's getting sections of your life where you're intentionally focusing on becoming a master in that one thing. And when you get to mastery level, then you can move on to another. I remember my parents saying to me, you're not going to give up martial arts until you get to a black belt. And then once I got to what you refer to in Japanese as shodan, meaning the beginning, the journey then was just to keep going after that, because I was already sold to the idea. And so this discipline is a great thing that is required. Discipline is that bridge between the goal and the accomplishment. And if you don't have that discipline, then you're not going to make it over the water into your accomplishment. So for me, it's sort of this idea that you're somewhat pressured into it sometimes. You have no choice sometimes, but once you get into it, then it's the natural flow of then just focusing your attention to achieve that thing when you're doing it.
And there's this great quote. It's like, you can do everything, just not all at the same time. And so I love that. Like, yeah, sometimes you need to focus on certain things to excel at it, and then, change your focus.
Yeah, I think Merritt, that's a very good point. And one of the things that I've tried to practice, and it is getting a lot more difficult, is to essentially try to compartmentalize your time throughout the day and just focus on one thing, particularly if I'm trying to write an article or working on a book or something, and essentially try to block up, have blocks of time that you just focus on one activity very intensely for one time without any having kind of distraction. And as I said, that's actually getting very difficult nowadays because there's just so many distractions, particularly from our mobile phones, and also everyone's got now watches as well, smart watches that bleep all the time, and to try to be focused on one activity without being distracted is actually getting a lot more difficult. But I think Julie's point earlier, I think deserves a bit more merit in the fact that many of us can afford to try these different activities and different kind of trajectories of career, but other people out of economic necessity cannot, and that's obviously perfectly fine. But it's all just comes down to the individual, and and it's not always as glamorous as many people from the outside may think. Oh well, look at that individual, look at all the various things that he's done, look how such an amazing life that they've led, and actually can be disadvantageous sometimes as well. And you're seen as unfocused and all over the place. And I remember myself specifically, it was a few years ago. I wanted to be part of a negotiations with through one of my friends at the United Nations, and there was one of the big conflicts in the world in the Middle East, and they put together a negotiation team, and I wanted to be part of that. And I submitted, an application. I went through the process, an interview, and essentially what I was told at the end is that what the UN is looking for is somebody who has a clear kind of trajectory. It's all just tick boxes, and they will look at your career and all. You've done a couple of startups, you've done a couple of this. This guy's just all over the place. What they want is a clear line, a clear kind of trajectory, and otherwise you simply don't. You just don't fill the criteria. So it does have disadvantages, having too much of various kind of stuff. And it's not always possible, especially in today's day and age, to have multiple careers. And we can see this simply by the age of the average Nobel laureate is just getting older and older. In the past, when the Nobel was first founded, you had people literally in their 20s and 30s. That's because the knowledge was essentially low-hanging fruit. There was much to be discovered. But now it literally takes a lifetime of learning just to make a dent in a particular field. So it's just so much more difficult to have multiple careers and excel in multiple areas. But what we should really be looking at is how to try to, rather than having multiple careers and having multiple fields of expertise, is just how to lead a richer life and how to just try out different things. You can have your career, you can be an accountant, you can be a doctor or a lawyer, but just trying out different things and excelling in them and living a richer life, not only for yourself but others around you as well. And I think that is a much better way to look at it than saying, oh, look, let's just have multiple careers and multiple fields of kind of expertise, so we can just have as many many things on our CV as possible.
Yeah, I feel like that goes back to Nathaniel talking about passion and purpose. I mean, that's a lot of what I look at now is where we see, epidemics of depression and suicide and anxiety and neurosis and what's going on with people. And so much of I think of that as we're in this like late stage capitalism of the post-industrial revolution, and we've all become so atomized, and our attention is so drained and demanded. We're losing the capacity for deep thought, to some extent, by these incredibly distracted states that we're constantly in, and the isolation. We were already dealing with the isolation of a social mediaized world, and now impounded by global pandemic, and just everything in our political discourse, in our thought discourse, it's just becoming blips and bloops, and we don't really have these deep, complex, nuanced debate and conversations and long form things that, for me, one of the greatest results of the pandemic at first, which feels horrible and privileged as well, because, obviously lots of suffering. But one of the things I started to do was turn off the phones, turn off the computers, and have these socially distanced one-on-one conversations with friends who would come over, have tea, sit in my yard far away from me, and have a 4-hour conversation without looking at my phone a single time. And that was only in that first, the first couple weeks where everybody truly did lock down for a bit here. And it was shocking, like, of how long it had been since I had an unstructured 4-hour conversation. And just even just looking at history and the ability, like reading, and what reading did to our brains when we started to have long isolated times of reading quietly with ourselves. And that you saw this explosion in invention that happened after the invention of the printing press, where people could do that at home by themselves. And it really, for me, begs to transformation that needs to happen of really, how do we give people the time to spend that time, whether it be martial arts or meditation or reading or taking a walk or staring at a tree, that really appreciating what happens to people's minds when they get to have that kind of time. And that it's really counter to, this drive to kind of quantify and monetize and be more efficient. And I'm really enjoying seeing a lot of people through this pandemic, how they're really beginning to oppose like hustle culture and like grind all the time, grind 24/7, that we were really going for that. And now it seems to be just enough to let people pump the brakes a little bit and go, maybe not, maybe let's not.
I couldn't agree with that more. Like, so I'll mentor specifically like young girls in science and arts a lot. And the main thing is that I always tell them is just like, give yourself time. Like you'll get this pressure that you have to be brilliant immediately, or that you're supposed to get it immediately. I'm just like, the one thing I can say is like, either put the horse blinders on and like just try to not look at other people and just give yourself time. Because I think that's like that's the magic wand. Like that's the magic thing, that's the magic recipe, is just giving yourself that time. I have this question that I would love to hear from you guys. I'm curious, like, what's the hardest decision you guys have made in pursuing this multidisciplinary life? Because I'm so sure you've had to make tons of sacrifices, or, it's a juggle. It's a difficult juggle.
For me, a hard decision for me was sacrificing. I mean, I've attained quite a high level in terms of my martial arts and teachers of martial arts as well. And one of the hardest things for me was to leave that to pursue aviation, because martial arts is a way of life in terms of it's built into my whole thing, like as in, you eat food, or you sleep, it's part of that process. And one of the hardest things for me was actually having to leave that in order to pursue another goal. When I mean leaving that, I was still doing it, but it was actually the empowerment of others, because it's never about this whole journey is always about creating leaders. It's about creating more people that can actually fall into a way of life that really is a holistic well-being. And for me, that was a very, very tough sacrifice which I had to make for a short time. That was very, very hard for me. And so for me, that was a hard, challenging one, because I was leaving my network that I had built, and my students that I had and had to pursue another dream. So it was really to put something down so I could pick something else up. That was a hard decision for me.
And something that you were so excellent at, and then having to start something so fresh and new as well.
That's it. And even when you're excellent as a leader, if you're not learning, then there's a problem. every leader, I think, needs to be able to learn, and it's always about being and having this servant type of mentality in everything that you do, whereby, you know, the greatest significance in this life isn't found through the house you live in or the car you drive or how big, you know, your enterprise is built. You know, the greatest significance in life is the amount of service you can give to somebody else. And I think once you unlock this, then you're really going to be flying in the right way and going in the right direction. And so, yeah, absolutely agree with everything what has been said already. And, you know, I don't know if any of the other people on the panel might even want to follow up on that.
Yeah, I think the hardest decision for any human being is always the fear of the unknown, and you know, what's going to come next. And we always, you know, and it's just a natural human thing to, you know, retreat into our own comfort zones. And if we're particularly comfortable doing a particular job, being in a, you know, secure environment, then, you know, why upset the balance and try something else on a different trajectory? Why take that leap? And that's always very difficult, and understandably. And for myself personally, I was in finance for quite some time. You know, some of myself and my colleagues, we founded a hedge fund and some online finance businesses. And then, you know, they had a limited lifespan, and it was time to move on, to sell up and kind of move on. And it was always very difficult to then try something completely new. And that was a very difficult thing to do. But at the end of the day, you know, one has to kind of take that leap and have enough confidence to do that. But I think, you know, as one gets older as well, you know, I think Nathaniel's point is very important, is that, you know, one realizes as well that life is much less about, you know, collecting stuff and, you know, doing lots of different stuff. And it really does come down to kind of, you know, having a fulfilling life, enriching life, but also service to others as well. And I have found, like, a lot of my work now is very different. I do a lot of policy related work, trying to, you know, create much more sharper political policies, advising policymakers in the US and elsewhere. I'm in a very unfortunate field. Most of my work is actually on genocide and mass atrocities now, and it's not an easy topic to, you know, to actually study on a regular basis. You know, I know people in this field, they suffer from PTSD now, simply because of the sheer volume of horrible things that they have to read. But at the same time, it's very fulfilling. And when you realize that you're trying to do something that you're hoping is going to make a little bit of a difference. And that, I think, as you get older and older, one starts looking back at their life to say, what have you actually done? And I think there was a very, very important article that I read many years ago about a geriatric nurse in Australia who spent 50 years working in a ward with patients who are at the end stages of their life, you know, for 50 years, half a century. And she said almost every single one of them that she spoke to had the same regrets. These are literally people that are going to die. Every single one of them had the same regrets. And the regrets were the same, is that, look, I wish I should have spent more time with my family. I wish I should have lived a life truer to myself and followed my dreams and passions rather than doing what others have always told me to do. And I think that's really important, because as we get older, you know, you do realize that, look, the rat race, as Juli indicated, everybody's in a grind, everybody's in a rat race to the top, you know, and, you know, is it really what you want to do? Is this what your life is going, is this what you're going to be proud of? You know, when you're 70 or 80 and you've been diagnosed with some disease or another, and you will only find fulfillment in living life for your family, for others around you, and trying to, you know, make their lives a little bit better and leave some sort of positive legacy behind you. But at the same time, having lived a life that's true to yourself, followed your own passions and did what you want to do, rather than being dictated to by others, being in having an unfulfilling life. So I think as I get older, I'm beginning to realize a lot of these things, and you know, I'm trying to fulfill some of those needs myself. But how successful one is really just, you know, down to multiple factors.
To echo a couple of those points, I think some of the difficult transitions I've made have been a lot of what Azeem was talking about at the beginning of his comments of, I think there's that saying where it's like, good is the enemy of great. and there's been moments where, like, the realization for me was, just because I'm really good at something doesn't mean I have to do it. and that there's been jobs I've had or roles that I've been in where I might be excelling and then having to come to that, but it's not feeding my soul, but it's not really what I want to do, but or it's played, the course is run. I should be like, and that was great, and now I need to go do something else, even when it's still paying, still, you know, good, I'm still successful. And those leaps, like it's easy to leave somewhere where it's like the house has fallen down and it's in rubbles and you're like, okay, it's time to move on. But leaving it when stuff's good is a rough transition. And also when Nathaniel was talking about future leaders, another big challenge has been that I am a parent and I have a child. And when I was pregnant, I played over 200 shows, you know, while I was pregnant until I was 8.5 months pregnant, like playing in a rock and roll band with my big old stomach. So, you know, having a child radically changed my schedule, and not just the ability to tour and travel and do some of the things that I was doing, but also the desire and willingness to do that, where it really shifted, you know, your sense of priorities, and trying to navigate that, like the desire to be with your family, to do things with the also desire to create things, and the need for solitude and the need to have alone time to make things is a hard one to navigate sometimes. But it was when I got pregnant and was talking to my husband about my philosophy of being a parent is truly like, you have to be the lived example of what you want for them. So I can't tell my child, follow your dreams, do all your things, you can achieve anything, if I'm not doing it. So it is an interesting balance of needing to take that time for myself, because I am the living example that he is seeing of how to live, you know, a fulfilling, adventurous life.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And actually, like, I'm curious, during these past months, we have seen that people, like in general, have lost motivation when wanting to pursue their dreams or their objectives, because things just got out of hands. How do you cope, or how do you like travel through these emotions, or what is the way that you think, or the process to get back up and just be like, okay, like things didn't go as planned, and now I'm gonna do this. Like what goes through your mind when things still do not go as you think they would go?
Well, I think it's really a mindset thing. This is totally about mindset. I mean,
yeah,
it is totally about what you're listening to, what you're reading, who you're talking to, what you're watching, the time out you're having, meditation. It's all about this holistic approach to life. Because the thing is, if there is a comparison that you can ever draw between the person that's outside in the snow, I mean, you know, Azeem's up there in the United States, it's freezing where he is at the moment, you know. Juli's struggling with the cool breeze of the California, 55, but I'm in London and it's cold, we got Miss Moore that's over in Dubai and it's absolutely sweltering hot there. But the thing is, it's actually the reality of the people that are there and putting everything into perspective, because right now there might be some orphans that are struggling with food, or there might be a homeless person that's out on the streets, and it's really putting this all into perspective. And then I do something which is very often, which is actually writing down things I'm grateful for, and I'll do that maybe 2 or 3 days. I'll write down a gratitude list of, I'm grateful for this, grateful for this, grateful for this, and then the perspective. Then also when you're setting goals, do not set goals that your brain is going to sabotage. Your subconscious mind is one of the greatest things that's going to pull something away and say, no, you can't achieve that because of this reason. Whereas if you set things which are a little bit more achievable, with that which is within your control, then you're able to then step into a place where you might feel better. And then by measuring these outputs which you have, another great effective tool for building that level of motivation is then a victory log. So you might actually have something that you've written down, and then by the end of the week you're ticking that off. All right, great, that's a good feel, that's a dopamine hit. There you go, you feel good. You get another thing moving now. You're setting a new thing for yourself. And again, with these small victories, that really does help in terms of your psycho-emotional wellness. But, you know, I always say this as well, you know, never allow someone that's wearing dirty boots to walk around in your brain. What that means is that, you know, the people that you're surrounded by as well, you know, don't allow them to put stuff into your head, because that can actually start to unpick all of those good feelings, you know, they can zap your energy. So it's really about that. And I think that, you know, this term of polymath, you know, I didn't even know what it meant before, you know, someone actually said, you know, someone who does multidisciplinary things, because you're never ever labeling yourself like this. But I think that if there was a label that might be used to describe some of us, is that, you know, we probably fit into this position of extroversion in some sense, because you know, as being someone that tries to kind of go out there and pushes themselves beyond their comfort circle all the time. I think you somewhat need to be a little bit of extrovert to do that. And I think naturally people like that will gravitate to other people like that, and then also keep their motivation levels up. So I very rarely have situations where, you know, I am down, so to speak. And if they are, they're very quickly sabotaged by the part of my brain saying, no, that's not reality. You know, come on, put it in perspective. And, you know, I unpick those types of thoughts. But, you know, as human beings, it's important that we maintain our socialization. So it means conversations. It means, you know, like Julia suggested, turn your phone off and just try and go for a walk. You know, you're allowed to go for walks in the middle of COVID. You know, you don't have to stay at home. You can be in a park. You can go out and walk by yourself, and you can do something. You know, you're still wearing your mask. You're still, you know, being obedient to the social distancing rules, but it's actually enjoying that. And, you know, by having the oxygen going into your brain, that's replenishing, you know, all of the blood flow to the brain, you know, you're reoxygenating all of your muscles and everything. So it's a good thing. And exercise really does unlock a lot of the good, happy feelings that you can gain to help you push you out of that levels of low places.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good piece of advice from Nathaniel, you know, particularly about writing stuff down. I remember when I was in high school, that was advice given to me by, you know, somebody who I really respected in the community. And he said, look, you know, take time out and write down all your goals and what you want to achieve. And it wasn't a very easy exercise, and it wasn't very quick, because there were just so many different things that when you're a teenager you want to do. But this was one of the best pieces of advice that I was given. I'm not in a position to advise anybody, but this is one of the best things that I think one could do, is to simply just write down, what do you actually want to achieve in life, and take your time to write down, you know, just a few bullet points in terms of, you know, I'd like to do this, A, B, or C, and then just take the time to think to yourself, you know, what is the next thing that I need to do to make this realization? Yeah, so you might want to write a book. Yeah, and there's probably, you know, that's a very long, lengthy exercise, but what's the next thing I need to do to write a book? Or maybe watch a short video in terms of how to become an author, maybe do something. What's the next step? And if you break it up into little steps, you know, just one by one, what's the next thing I need to do now? And what's the next step after that? And you realize that, well, look, it's actually, you know, not that difficult. Eventually, it might take some time, but break up into steps. Whereas writing a book and getting it published, you know, is a much, much larger task. And I think the other thing that I would say is that, which is, you know, I find very important, is which both Julie and Nathaniel touched upon, is just taking time out. And this is actually much more difficult now than it has ever been, simply because our attention now has been commodified by technology companies and social media companies. You know, they are designed specifically, these social media applications and technology is designed for your attention. This is how they sell to advertisers. They have to sell a degree of certainty that, look, this person, Azeem Ibrahim, is going to be looking at this advertisement for this many seconds, and this is specifically targeted to him, knowing that his particular makeup and demographic and his interests and so on. And to break that cycle, you know, this is being designed by some of the world's leading experts. These are the most wealthiest companies in the world with the best expertise, much smarter than you and I. And it's all designed to take your attention. And, you know, I was offered a gift by a family friend of mine of a smartwatch. And I had to refuse it because I already have so many distractions. I do not want my wrist beeping and telling me I got this message or I got that message or this email's come through or the temperature's dropped. I just don't need that distraction. And you will find that, you know, when I do some writing, I now turn off my phone. But you realize that if you do this even when my phone is off, I pick up my phone. And this has just become part of our habitual nature, which we really have to try to break through. And I'll tell you very finally, one of my friends is a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and he's been in these positions for quite some time in Silicon Valley. And it's very interesting because he literally has no alerts on his phone whatsoever. Nothing. There's nothing that alerts him. When he text messages me, I read the text, I text him back. I see that he never reads a text. He literally puts his phone on and texts everybody he needs to text, contact, and he puts his phone off, and it's off for like 4 hours. It can be very frustrating for me, but this is essentially how he operates. And people at that level, that's how they operate. They're not distracted by these apps and alerts and everything else. They're literally they own the country. These people are running the world. They're not. All this stuff is for people that are essentially going to be easily distracted, that can be commodified. And this is something I think is a very fruitful exercise to undertake, is just to put your phone off for a couple of hours, and you realize how difficult it actually is. It's practically become impossible. And if you leave your phone at home and go for a walk, you feel that a part of you is missing. Is not an easy exercise, but I urge everybody, if there's any advice that you could take away, and once again, I'm not in a position to advise anybody, is to essentially write down your goals and ambitions, figure out what's the next thing you need to do to try to achieve them. Very simple, could be literally very simple. Wonder what next is to make a single phone call. Maybe you want to be a doctor. What's the best thing to do? Make a call to a college or somebody that is a doctor, get some advice from them. Something simple like that. Another thing is just to try to avoid as many distractions as you can, because I don't think anything good comes out of those distractions. I'm not on any social media now except Twitter, because I have to be, because I'm a columnist for a number of publications, and otherwise I'm not on anything at all. And that's the best decision I ever made.
I couldn't agree with you more. Oh wow, I'm really starting to lose my voice. But for me, a life-changing moment in high school was the same thing. I'd lost all motivation, and I was just like, what's the purpose of like getting good grades, why? And someone gave me a piece of paper and a pen and was like, write down your goals, write down why. And then most importantly, like write down why it'd be helpful or improve someone else's life. And that for me was like, that changed my life. Cause then I just realized I was so lazy for myself, but like given like that purpose, as Nathaniel was saying, and like, then I was like, wow, that could tap into, it just gave me so much energy.
Yeah, and I think those tools that Nathaniel and Azeem were talking about of writing things down is a way, quite literally, to be like, how do you keep your eyes on your own page? And that is one of the problems of social media as well, because I get on Instagram, I start scrolling, I can't help but compare what everybody else is doing. Should I be doing that? Should I do that? Should I do that career? And especially if you're a person, it happens to everybody, but if you are in this polymathic category, that's a problem for me. Because if I look at anything, my brain is going like, that's your next career. You should do that. Now you should try that. You got to go, you should become a snowboarder. You should do that, and it's a constant world of kind of this omnipresent potentiality. So there is the need to come back to self and go, what is my real impulse here? Because also when you're writing down those goals, I think it's critical as well, what Nathaniel was talking about, of what do you have power over and what are you powerless over, and really understanding that distinction. Because if I write down, I want, everybody in the world to love me, I'm going to have a problem because I have no control over, everybody in the world. But if I'm writing down, as Azeem was saying, I want to write this novel, so I'm going to write, for 3 minutes every morning or whatever it is. These are the things that are within my power. And I think also so much of it is like I do the gratitude list, and I do, writing every morning. Those are the ways that I kind of, dump my brain out so that I'm not just, gerbil wheeling on useless things all day. But it's so essential of how do I get myself to the place where I can hear my own impulse. So that, and then the willingness to, like, when I hear that little voice inside, and it's really being able to identify what is my little voice and what is the world saying, maybe this, maybe that, or, you know, whatever. And when you hear that little voice, just having the willingness to say, okay, yes. When I hear the little voice say, maybe you should pick up this book, maybe you should go take that walk, maybe, and it's difficult to hear in all the noise. And that's why we really have to like tune into that voice, because that has always been the voice, that when that one pipes up and has its weird little yearning or its interesting creative idea, or what if the, you know, if I'm working on a piece and it's like, well, what if this happened? Like I have learned to, when that voice is willing to talk to me, you go, yeah, okay, yes, absolutely, I support you, let's do this.
Yeah, it's discerning. Yeah, that. Go ahead, Nathaniel.
Sorry, yeah, I just want to tail off of all of this, you know, because at this time of society, it's like our brain is like a rushing stream. Like we can't see the reflection in the stream. It's moving so fast, and you know, a way in which you know, you can take yourself to remove that is intentionally planning in your calendar. You know, if you're a business person, if you're, you know, you're working an employee, you know, you're filling up your diary and you've got your calendar, which is your PA just putting all these meetings in your free gaps. It is to intentionally block out a 30-minute session for you to switch out. And in order for the power to do that, because we are habitual people, we're social creatures, it is having someone that you're accountable to. So this is actually where you're going to partner with somebody that might be in your circle that you trust enough to actually partner with you, to actually say, okay, this is going to be my accountability partner that is going to tell me, you know, did you do that? Did you take your 30 minutes out? And it's really getting that checkout. Now it's like this. I don't know, you know, yeah, let's say you want to go to the gym and you want to work out because you want to lose weight or you want to do something. And let's say the gym the only time you can go to the gym is going to be at 5:30 in the morning. But you know, you traditionally only wake up at 6:30. So, you know, by yourself, the motivation to get out of bed, if you have a late night at 5 o'clock to get to the gym at 5:30 is not going to be there. However, if I've got Azeem that's outside my house beeping the horn, right? Well, it might not be beeping at 5:30 in the morning, but if I know Azeem has taken the time to travel to my house to make sure that we can go to the gym together, I'm more likely to go to the gym. And so this is the importance of the accountability partner. If you're missing that level of discipline, I go back to the comment which I made earlier. Discipline is the bridge between the goal and the accomplishment. So if the goal is for you to actually have this time out, for you to actually get this, well, the Japanese refer to that concept as seido, to be free from noise, to get this really stationary position and be able to see your reflection in the water, you know, and to take that time out. It could be made up of anything. It could be actually you just daydreaming. You know, you close your eyes and imagine that you're on a beach somewhere if you're in the cold, or I don't know, you might want to be skiing or something. Whatever it is that basically makes you feel good, you are closing your eyes and visualizing at that time for about 30 minutes. And the more you practice that, the more comfortable you'll feel in that space. And what that will help you to do is create what we refer to as a metaphoric anchor. And at a time when you're very busy, because of the practice of meditate in that place of peace back in your mind, when you're doing that very high stressful thing, you can actually remove yourself from that point, turn your phone off, and actually go to that very serene place in your mind, which is stimulating all of that internal hormonal goodness, really, to replenish your mind and to replenish you, and really having that discipline in order for you to stick to those times out. And so you can then say, I'm busy. And that busyness is actually having your own time. So, you know, it's not in a meeting, but it's actually, I'm busy reading or I'm busy going for a walk, you know, but they don't need to know what the end of that busy is. You can just say, sorry, my calendar's busy. It's full that time.
Oh, but I think that's so important. It's like being a polymath, being multidisciplinary, you're juggling so much. You have to be so thoughtful about what you let into your life, and so thoughtful about where your time is spent, so thoughtful about what's visually going on through your head and blocking off time just for you. So I think that's like such an incredible point.
Yeah, and I'm just so glad that this is gonna stay on like for 3 months. So we can just like go back and listen to everything that you said like now. And I mean, sadly, our time is getting almost over, but we have this one question from one of our audience members. And Alex asks, hi everyone, do your various projects in different fields inform one another? And have you got any specific examples?
What was the question? I didn't get that.
Sure. Do your various projects in different fields inform one another? So I guess he's meaning something like what you do in one of those fields.
Does it contribute to another?
Does that add up to another, or do they somehow come together? I think
Yeah. No, I think that's a great question. I think it's a difficult one to answer as well, because each of the projects, obviously, that one is working on is, it's coming from yourself, and it's not always very clear in terms of, what lessons and what tools and what philosophies you may have picked up from one that are contributing to the other, because it's essentially all part of one kind of mix. I would certainly like to think that some of the stuff that I worked on in terms of some of the mechanisms that have helped me become more disciplined have certainly contributed to projects that I've worked on further down the field. I spent some time in the military, for example, and that obviously results in quite sharp discipline. And the tools that I picked up from that, were very, very useful in some of the other stuff that I went on to do, particularly some of the more academic kind of related material. But I think some of the others may have a different interpretation.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see a lot of continuum and intermingling and overflow. I mean, as mentioned, I became a boxer out of my studying was in theater, and I was an actor and playwright and director. And when I looked at boxing, I saw it as an ultimate theatrical spectacle. So I went into it as a performance artist being like, this is the craziest thing I can imagine doing. And then, also through that discipline, through, truly going for it, was really good at it. But it really, clarified so much dramatic thinking for me, because there's no more primal drama. It's like a gladiator battle where everybody understands this story. When you step into a ring and you go, got it, the narrative absolutely clear. So there's so much of that world that then I brought back into what I do in theater and experimental theater in these worlds of spectacle, and certainly music. And I mean, I used to keep my musical kind of adventures and what I made in theater very distinct, and those have started to meld together a lot more. But then also in my professional life, my playwriting that I was doing, like the language and what I was dealing with my playwriting was getting more and more philosophical. So then I decided to get a PhD in philosophy. So I was like, I should study this, and ended up going and doing that, which came back and informed kind of a lot of the performative aspects of that. And then, ended up getting recruited into the cannabis industry in early 2015 to do regulatory compliance, because I'm a weirdo that likes to read really complicated things. So policy and regulations and compliance completely made sense to me. And because I have a theatrical background and a lot of acting training, somehow I'm able to explain it to other people and to operators and to the government and to, public health, just to read this stuff, disseminate it, and then tell it. So I don't think there's any, as I'm sure Nathaniel and Azeem can attest to, there's no role on this earth where being a good storyteller isn't a huge asset. The ability to take in information, simplify that information, construct it into emotionally powerful stories, and experience, things with empathy and communicate that. That's how policy moves. That's how the ability to articulate these stories and take it from data and statistics into powerful stories is usually the thing that actually moves the heart of people to say, oh no, that's not fair, we shouldn't be doing that, we need to do this another way. I mean, and in every aspect of any job I've had, any career, whether it's performing, speaking from a stage as a front person, doing a play, or talking to, legislative bodies, that ability to connect and communicate and empathize is what moves the needle across the board.
Amazing story. I love how you went into boxing as like the penultimate like theatrical spectacle. That's really had me laughing.
It's crazy. I watch videos of myself and I'm like, I can't believe I did that. It's so weird, but it was great.
You can't make that journey up. It's great.
I mean, for me, the principles of the martial way really stem across all of the disciplines in terms of the everything that is contained within this type of martial code which you follow. It kind of covers across all of the disciplines. But if there is any level of diversity in terms of and really just you can't really equate them together. One is actually in flying aeroplanes, and the other is actually going into prison to do intervention work with high risk offenders. They're completely unrelated. However, the way in which you deal with the challenge with personalities, with these offenders that are incredibly difficult to work with, somehow it helps you then, when you're in a very tough situation, or when you're having a boardroom discussion with some people that seem to have a certain way of thinking. So it does interlink in some way, even though some of the things are just so separate from each other. You just wonder how on earth they can connect, but it's knowing your strengths. And once you understand those strengths and operating in those strengths, you can actually apply it to anything that you do. And it indeed is very, very transferable. It's just like any other skill. Once you become excellent in that skill, you can transfer it into other areas with the same level of discipline and focus and hard work. With hard work, you're going to achieve it. You don't go wrong without hard work. So just keep it moving and keep pushing.
Yeah, as Azeem was saying, make one's life richer with all of that. And I mean, these were such fantastic points of making one's life richer, focusing on discipline as the link between goals and achievement, and giving oneself that space and that freedom, particularly from the phone, but from all of the bombardment of things that the society tells us that we should be doing, in order to hear that, as Juli was saying, that little voice when it pipes up. This has been, so incredible.
I also want to just add to that list, because I do think Nathaniel brought it up.
Oh, please do.
As well a couple of times, is not just the personal fulfillment, but that being of service, and like that ability to feel. And I think that's the thing that becomes really rewarding, as Azeem was saying, the things when I think about laying on my deathbed and the things that I'm going to regret, I'm never going to be like, I wish I earned more money. Like, I wish I spent more time at the office. And that act of service, I like to believe that the more we do to be our authentic selves and to radiate that passion and that purpose and get out there, that is being of service. Like, that is being an example of the world, because so many people are, and I've gotten this feedback from people, so many people are looking for that permission. And whether you can give it to yourself, whether you get it from seeing an inspirational speaker, whether you get it from it's kind of what social media is simulating. It's our deep desire for like connecting, being inspired, having a community, and we kind of have to work our way back to having those things in the real tangible world, which is a challenge now. But I think that act of that being yourself is being of service is one thing that I would love to communicate to people.
And also,
I think like from something that we were, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and also this is just gonna be a quick one, and it's also really never allowing your dreams to become regrets, because oftentimes people will actually be in a position where, you know, they've always wanted to, or they've always desired to, and then, you know, they get to 10 years later and they'll be like, oh man, I wish I did that thing. And so I just say, look, act on it, you know, just go out there and do it, really, just like the night tick, do it, just do it.
And that has truly been my pandemic promise to myself, is everything that I've been putting off, I just started doing, and allowing myself, and doing it badly. Like, I've learned to edit. I've made 8 music videos. I've done stop motion animation. I'm doing an international Zoom, you know, audio theater production right now. It's just that thing of like, you know what? Do it. Just do. Don't regret it. If you think it and you're like, oh, I wish I did that, do it.
I think that's a very good piece of advice from Julie. You know, the Nike tick, just do it. It's just a few words, but Nike being the corporation that is, I can guarantee you the amount of money, the amount of investment, the amount of thought that went into that logo, you know, and it's actually very true. You know, somebody once told me that don't negotiate with yourself because you'll always lose, and that's very true. You know, shall I go to the gym, or shall I go out, you know, running now? It's a bit foggy. So once you start negotiating with yourself, you're always going to lose. And the reality is, just do it. You know, and you know, it might be a Nike cliche, but it's very true. You know, a lot of thought's been gone into that, and it certainly works. Just don't negotiate with yourself. Don't make excuses. Just actually get up and just do it.
Benefits of waking up at that 5:30 gym time, as Nathaniel was saying, is like your brain hasn't woken up enough to like negotiate with yourself. That's why I do everything early in the morning before that brain turns on to like be like, but do you really have to?
Yeah, I can do it tomorrow, or it's later. Oh, it's too rainy outside. It's too cold now. Once you start negotiating with yourself, you always will lose.
Oh wow, this really has been an amazing time, being just like here, listening to all of your wisdom, to your experience, and also like feeling this humbleness coming from you. I think that's also something that we can all keep to ourselves. And I think like what you all have been doing in your lives is also a way in which you are just like leaving this to the world and paying respect to the generations that have come before you and have allowed you to do what you do today. So I think like ourselves being able to continue creating for the coming after us, I think that's something I admire very deeply from all of you. So thank you so much for being here today. Azeem, Juli, Nathaniel, Merritt, it's been a pleasure being here with you. And to all of the Polymath, the DaVinci Network and the Polymath Festival audience, thank you so much for tuning in today. And well, we hope that you enjoyed the whole festival.